welcome back. So today we are going to be talking about geometry and what geometry is and what aspects there are a part of it. And I am teaching this in 7th grade. So this is about 7th grade. Maybe you'll see some of this stuff in 6th grade, but this is like mainly 7th grade material. Alright? So, to begin, what is geometry? Hopefully we've heard about geometry. We should be thinking shapes, specific types of shapes, stuff like that. And that's basically what geometry is. It is the study of shapes, angles, lines, area, and volume. The study of shapes, angles, lines, area, and volume. That's geometry. Each of these can go into a long list of other things that are in each. Like shapes have a bunch of parts to shapes. Angles, lines, areas, and so forth. Alright? So then, we're going to talk about specific vocab that everyone should know that is related to geometry. So, the first vocab is called a point. And we should have heard point before. Alright? When we talk about coordinate planes have points on them. Alright? So a point is a location in space with no size or dimension. So a location in space with no size or dimension. Or dimension. So location in space with no size or dimension. And points are just basically a circle. Alright? That's what it looks like when you see a point on a graph. Same thing, a point. Alright, next up we have a line. And all of us should have heard of the word line. We've heard the line. Do we know the specific context and the definition? Maybe not. So a line is a straight path that extends in both directions infinitely. So a straight line, or a straight path, excuse me. A straight path that extends in both directions infinitely. Or indefinitely. Both things means the same thing. Alright, so a straight path that extends in both directions indefinitely. Or infinitely. Alright? And that looks like this. So we have a line. And we know that this goes on forever. The line goes on forever. And the way to show that is that we put arrows on the end of the straight line, and that just signifies that it goes into both directions forever. Alright? Next up, we have a line. That's what we just talked about before. Now we have a line segment. Alright? A line segment. Alright, let's look that over here. But a line segment. A line segment is a part of a line with two endpoints. Alright? So it'll start the same way as a line, but instead of arrows on the end, we're going to have 2 points on the end. And the way we show points is that circle. Alright? A part of a line a part of a line with 2 endpoints. There we go. A part of a line with 2 endpoints. We're going to do it the same way, but instead of arrows on the end, we're going to have points on the end. And that just signifies that this line ends at the points. A line has arrows on the end, showing it goes on forever. A line segment is just a portion of that line, just a specific portion. That's why there's endpoints on there. All right? Then we have a ray. A ray. So R-A-Y. Let me underline, just so you can clearly see what the words are. All right? So next up we have a ray. A ray. Not array, like multiplication. A ray. All right? So a ray is a part of a line that starts at one point and then extends infinitely in one way, or indefinitely. So a part of a line that starts at a point at one end so it starts at a point with one end and then extends infinitely or indefinitely the other way, or in the other one way. So, point at one end and extends infinitely or indefinitely. I'm going to use the same verbiage. Indefinitely. Indefinitely in one way. Or I should say in the other way. Alright, so a part of a line, so we know there's going to be a straight segment that starts at a point at one end and extends indefinitely in, let me say the other way. I like that better. So it starts at one point at one end and extends indefinitely in the other way. So one point on one end, a point on the end, the other end has an arrow. And we can show that by one point, then we have a line, and then we have an arrow. So this is where the line starts, and it goes on forever. And I've got two more words, all right? Two more words. So the next one, we have angle. That's a big one we see in geometry, an angle. An angle. So we should have heard the word angle before. We talk about different shapes and stuff. So an angle is a space between two rays. Space between two rays. Space between two rays that intersect at a point. That intersect at a point, or at the point. That intersects or cross. Intersect at a point. And we know angles, we say they're measured in degrees. All right? Measured in degrees. There we go. All right? And a way we can show or draw an angle is we know we have a point here. That's a ray, right? We start at a point. Make it a little larger. We start at a point, and we go infinitely in the other direction. And we have another ray that extends. They meet at the point, and they both extend in their own way. And we measure basically the distance between the two rays, all right? We just basically how far away are those two lines, or two rays, excuse me. And it's measured in degrees. So what we would say like 38 degrees. And we have a little circle up there. That's how we show degrees. And last one, we got parallel lines. And we'll be talking about those a lot in the next one. So, parallel lines. hopefully, you've heard what parallel lines are. They are lines that extend forever, that will never intersect, and they never will cross. Alright? They both are going in the same direction forever, and they never meet up with each other. So, lines that never cross, that go on indefinitely. Alright? Lines that never cross. That go on indefinitely. And I'll move out of the way for you guys. On indefinitely. Alright? So lines that never cross, that go on indefinitely, or forever. Alright? And we show that by one line going, and then right underneath another line. And you want to try to keep them looking like they're going in the same direction. Alright? So these are all the vocab we have. A point, a line segment, array, angle, and parallel lines. Alright, and these are the examples visually. Alright, so now that we got through all the vocabulary and what goes into geometry, we're going to talk about one big key feature of geometry, and that is congruency, and more specifically ways to show congruency. So, you might have not heard this word yet. If you have, that's great. If not, congruency just means the exact same. Alright, so whenever you hear the word congruency, you should be thinking that means the exact same. Alright? Congruency, the exact same. Alright? The exact same. So, one thing that we know that geometry has is shapes. And we know that shapes have sides. We now know that shapes have angles. Remember, that's where there's two rays, the distance between the two rays. So, shapes have sides, and they have angles, have corners. Alright? So, we're going to start with side lengths. So we know the side of a shape is right here. We have this side, and that side. So, we got to show which sides are equal or congruent, and which sides are not. Alright? So, right here, we're showing what shape this is. This is a rectangle. Alright? How we are going to show congruent sides is with hash marks. Alright? So, we know that this side length here, we're going to call A. We're going to call that side length A. Does it matter which one we call A? No. But for our cases here, for our purposes here, we're going to call it A. Alright? And then we're going to call this side B. And you can see where C is going to probably go. C is going to go at the bottom. And then we have side D. And we just label the sides this way just so we can see more clearly which side we're talking about. Because we'll see in the future, we'll see coming up here, some sides are the same and some sides are different in length. So, how we show the same length is hash marks again. So, if we have side A here, we're going to put a hash mark here, right? That's our first side, we're going to put one hash. One hash. Not two, but one hash. So we're going to put one hash there. The other side, that is the same length as side A, would be across from it. We know this side is also the same length as A. So side A and side C get one hash, and that just shows they are both the same size. Alright? Now, we have sides B and side D left, and we know they are both the same length. Alright? But if we put one hash mark, that can't be good, because side A and side C are different than side B and C, or excuse me, B and D. Alright? So, we've got to use a different amount of hash marks. We're going to use, instead of one hash, let's use two hashes. Alright? So, side A and side C are congruent because they both have one hash. Side D and side B are congruent, and we know that because they have two hash marks. We know side A and C are different in length than side B and D because they have different hash marks. All right, hope that makes sense. Now, we're just going to write out what I just said. So sides A and C are congruent. Sides A and C are congruent because they both have one hash mark or dash mark. Either one works. Because they both have one dash. Oh, and over here, I want to say use dash marks or hashes, either one works. Use dashes to show side lengths. Side lengths. Alright. So, side A and C are both congruent. They're the exact same because they both have one dash. Alright. Then we can say side B and D are congruent because they both have how many dashes? 2 dashes. Alright. Sides B and D are congruent because they both have 2 dashes. And then we can also say, one last thing we can say, sides. What do you think we can say about sides A and side B? Side A and side B, are they congruent or not congruent? Well, side A has 1 hash, side B has 2 hash marks, so they are not congruent. Sides A and B are not congruent because A has 1 dash or 1 hash. A has 1 dash. And side B, what side? Because side A has 1 dash and side B has 2 dashes. Alright, and that's how we show congruent sides. That's how we show which sides are equal to each other. Just the amount of hash marks they have. Alright, now, we just finished up talking about congruent sides. Remember, congruent means the same. Now we're going to be talking about congruent angles. So shapes have sides to them, and shapes also have angles to them. Alright, and we know that the sides are on the outside. The angles are where those 2 lines meet. Alright, so we got to now show which angles are congruent to each other. Alright, and we're going to label these angles just like we label the sides. We're going to label these angles A, B, C, and D. So we're going to start up here. We're going to do A, B, C, D. Alright? And where our angles are located basically at the corners of the shape. Alright, so we can see that angle A, we're going to start with angle A, just like before. And the way we show different degrees of angles is instead of using hashes with the sides, we're going to use curved lines. And we're basically connecting one ray, or one line, to another. Alright? So that's how we show angles. Alright? So we always pick one angle, and we put one curved line there. Now we got to remember, hey, which angle is going to be the same as angle A? And in our case, that angle is angle C. Alright? So since they both have the same angle, we're going to use one curved line for both of them. All right. Now, we see that angle A and C are bigger than angle B and D. So instead of using one curved line, we're going to use two curved lines. And they are both going to be congruent, so they have the same amount of curved lines. All right. Angles A and C are congruent because they both have one curved line. Angles B and D are congruent because they both have two. And we can also say angle C and say angle B are different because angle C has one curved line, angle B has two. All right. Now I'm just going to write that down just so you have that in your notes. All right. Angle A and C. Angle A and C are congruent because they both have two lines. I keep forgetting this. Under the shape, I want you to write use curved lines to show angles. Use curved lines to show angles. Alright, so I'm just saying use the curved lines to show the angles. I want to make sure that the angles, when we're looking at angles, it's a different symbol or feature than when we're showing lines or sides. Excuse me. All right, so angle A and C are congruent because they both have one line. Because they both have one line. One curved line at A, one curved line at C. All right, then we can say angles B and D are congruent because they both have two lines. Angles A and C. What was it? Angles B and D are congruent because they both have two curved lines, or two lines. Because they both have two lines. Alright, and just like the sides, when we talked about the sides, we can say angles. Let's say angles D and C are not congruent because angle C has one line, angle D has two. So angles C and D are not congruent because angle C has one line, angle D has two lines. And angle D has two. Alright, and that's how we show congruent angles, just by those curved lines. If they have the same amount of curved lines, they're congruent, they're equal. If they have difference, then obviously they're not the same. And the last thing we're going to talk about before wrapping up this lesson is parallel lines. Alright? So, we know from when we listed out our definitions and stuff, we knew that parallel lines are two lines that go on forever, that never intersect or never touch. Alright? So, we got to show that using some sort of notation. Alright, and we know we're talking about lines, so we're going to label the lines A, B, C, and D. Alright, so imagine line A going on forever and line C going on forever. Alright, do you think they're ever going to cross if they keep going on forever? I don't think so. This type of shape is a square, and we know that line A and line C are going in the same direction and they'll never cross. So the way we show that is using arrows. Alright? So we're going to put a little arrow on the top of our square, or our line, on the line. Alright? So we're saying this line goes in that direction, has one arrow. Alright? Line C is parallel to line A, so line C also gets one arrow. Alright? And arrows just mean that they are parallel. Alright? Not saying that this line only goes in this direction, no. It's just saying that this line has one arrow, this line has one arrow. That's telling us, hey, those two lines are parallel. They're never going to cross. Now, line B and line D are also parallel, but they are not parallel to A and C, so we can't use one arrow. Instead, we're going to use two. So, let's use two arrows, just like that. Alright, and because line B and line D both have two arrows, they are parallel. Alright, so let's write that out. So, sides A and C are parallel because they both have one arrow. They both have one arrow. And we can say the same thing for side B and D, but they both have two arrows. So sides B and D are parallel because they both have two arrows. Alright. And under here, I'm going to say, just like the last two, use arrows to show parallel lines. Use arrows to show parallel lines. Show arrows to show parallel lines. Alright, and then the last thing we're going to write for this lesson, we can say side A and side D are not parallel because side A has one arrow and side D has two arrows. So side A and D are not parallel because side A has one arrow and side D has two arrows. There we go. So that is pretty much the introduction to geometry. We talked about different symbols and phrases that we see in geometry, like line segment, ray, point. We talked about congruency, how that means the exact same. We talked about ways to show congruent lines, congruent angles, and then we also talked about how to show parallel lines. So that's the start. We're going to get into polynomials, and once we get into polynomials, we'll get into area, perimeter, we'll get into triangles, circles, but we'll all get there eventually. Alright? Having this base that we just talked about today will help us with all of those future lessons. Alright? Again, if you have any questions or concerns or things that you don't understand, drop in a comment, let me know. Until then, again, don't forget, don't be the negative in the world, be the positive. Thanks again for watching, hope that helped, and I'll see you guys next time.